Who is the voice inside your head? What is the sound and what does it mean? What is the light? What do you see? Something is clear, something for me. And I do feel more and more like I remember something curious rather than shocking, like my last major dream recall. Barak of Ashad, may the blessings be. From the 26th of the 5th month of 1435, the Dream Master Technique and the ECK Dream 1 Discourses, Lesson 2. Before the ECK Dream 1 Discourses, Lesson 1 starts, is a close-up of the center and center left of a painting of Harold Klemp. Is Harold Klemp God's agent, as the caption calls you to? Lesson 2, the Dream Master. As if one didn't already know such beliefs were part of Eckankar, this discourse proclaims what Harold Klemp, or whoever heads Eckankar, is the Dream Master, the Mahanta way shower, and the inner master. If you dream about someone, are they really there? Is it different for any of the spiritual leaders that call themselves God-men? Well, they call themselves God-man, but, on an individual basis. No, it sounded right the first time, right? Is it different for any of the spiritual perhaps they're saying that the spectral evidence of witch trials the world over is not only valid, but is something a governing body should punish for, like physical offenses. How can multiple beings have omniscience, or omnipotence, or omnipresence? How does page 31 of the ECK Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp speak truth in this, even for the agent of God who is fully submissive in thought, word, and deed to God at that moment? Harold Klemp contradicts all three of these in his public talks, public works, and private works. He has said many a time to the effect of, "Don't expect me to prove any of these to you, even if you are a high initiate." It is even contradicted by the implication in he can be with all chelas, spiritual students, at the same time. Dream help is said to be available in the Ekvidya, or ancient science of prophecy, that is not as reliable in detail or accuracy as one would expect from a science or a revelation. I must agree with the idea of accepting guidance or mentoring. To understand dreams or gain spiritual attainment, I have taken this from many others, both human and metaphysical, just as long as it's Islamic. There may be protocol to the places we visit, even in a dream or vision. In the waking state, there may very well be nightmares and other unpleasant situations that arise from even ignorance of such. That is why it is important to gain some detail when practicing inner plane projection, astral projection, lucid dreaming, or soul travel. It may be best to not be vague or speculative when working on projections upon the structure of consciousness. Thought, I squeaked instead of talked. Thought or dream work can help us to learn lessons we don't have to relearn in our outer lives. Can we really be taught books of the Shariat Ki Sugmad, Way of the Eternal, the Eckankar Bible, without being exposed to it, and somehow accepting the leader of Eckankar as more than a corporate head, but an outer master. Most would think the warnings and advice in dreams and psychedelic visions are from ourselves, are for some being more holy than one who would inhabit a physical body. I would agree with page 32 about not only Harold Klemp being two-faced, but Paul Twitchell and Darwin Gross. Darwin Gross? Gross seems to be what it looks like because it's two S's. The first and second historical Eckmasters. I would humbly disagree as to how, but agree that there is a power of love. How else can God be described as most loving in both Al-Quran and some of the world's Bibles? If there was no power of its manifestation, after all, from the Greek word dunamis, our power over comes duhnami, which is a title before the subtitle of the ancient science of divine contentment, which is a spin-off from the ancient teachings of the masters, an Eckankar spin-off founded by Darwin Gross after he was voted out of the leadership in August of 1983. And you'll find that he was the titled the Mahata, the Living Eckmaster, before that. But Harold Klemp also got the Living Eckmaster title, so there were two at the time. For almost 2 years, repeating two names of God, repeating true names of God, action in God's name, and passionate love of others are ways you'd likely agree are for attaining purity of heart. Whether or not Rebazar Tarsus ever existed physically or metaphysically, you might disagree with the concept of a God who only gives to those who live some for other creations, unless you think this is impossible to never do. Even the worst beings got something right, it seems. Eckankar may not fully agree with Islam about there being no evil God in conflict with the one and only God, but they do not believe in any fully negative creation either. One Eckankar member worked for a medical company where conversation on religion was frequent. The born-again Christians wanted to save every soul there. The Eckankar member denounced the belief in death and listed karma and reincarnation in its place. How is calling death translation, making it not a death? The Eckankar initiate, explained about what seemed like a novel faith to some of her co-workers, and even gave out information to some. This caused the Christians to form a prayer group to pray for her. One Christian later showed off her new car with a Bible on display, showing what the faith had provided. Had it really? Do physical things really make one happy in themselves? I would agree with Harold Klemp on page 34 about there being more important things to a religion than what it can get you materially. Interesting thing for someone with a company mansion to be saying, and a lavish expense account, and that makes his salary superfluous. But the proselytizing was getting annoying. But there is an implied justice in that woman's car turned out to be more problems than it was worth. By then, Eckankar material was being listened to or read by coworkers. People seemed to remember more spiritual psychedelic experiences. The Eckist shared several copies of the Eckankar journal with their coworkers. A fellow employee thought a recent dream was her chance to provoke the Eckist's salvation. Her dream seemed more real and detailed than any previous dream. She dreamt that she visited the Eck's home with the Bible to find a woman long trapped in a cage with Eck, E. K, upon it. She thought it was the Greek word ek, are the preposition meaning out of, from among, without, far from, since, immediately after, on the part of, becoming, because of, are in consequence of. The Christian didn't know what it meant, so it was explained as meaning Holy Spirit, spiritual, God as a verb, or some other Eckankar usage. In the dream, there was a distraction from noisy children outside. The dreamer lined them against a wall to pray for them till they were quiet. The dreamer went back in the home for Bible retrieval, only to have it disintegrate. In the dream, the Ekis tried to help put it back together again, but it was too fragmented. The dream was interpreted as a psychic invasion of the X space, and that the woman was actually the dreamer, trapped in her own consciousness. The X symbol was drawn later and said to resemble the dream symbol. The Christian most assuredly saw it on the Eckankar material that was being shared. She probably rightly interpreted the dream the first time as a conviction that the Ekist was sort of imprisoned by Eckankar. The person in the dream, thought to be the husband of the Ekist, looked like pictures of Harold Klemp that are in many of the material that is in much of the material available from Eckankar, even on the cover. The interpretation of the dreamer got from another was probably right in that she wanted to control people who she thought were enjoying themselves in a childish way through interest in Eckankar. The Ekis told her, "If you don't stop praying for me, I'll turn this matter over to the Mahanta, the living Ekmaster." The Christian woman probably deemed it a threat, and later was heard in her prayer group telling them not to pray for others without their permission. I would think page 37 is wrong about the Christian finding agreement with the Eckankar doctrine of the spiritual principle of non-interference. Because how could they be a believer in their own faith, although most people haven't reached that station of how I would term the word believer, as in wanting it for everyone or thinking it's right in some expression for everyone. It seemed she likely thought this was a threat to have what she probably deemed a psychic vampire or black magician, and the threat was not to be tested. Do people thus have the power to invade dreams of others without their permission, like Harold Klemp claims to have done here? If true, how is that not a violation of a spiritual law too? Dream study should be connected to taking guidance within and from others. A desire to understand them as involving one's outer life is also essential. You'll have to judge for yourself about the third principle here, in the third step of the staircase in workbook activity number 6 of this lesson. I don't deem it coherent or a non-destructive belief. Dream work should be part of an effort of gaining in consciousness. Spiritual exercises or practices can be of great help to any personal or group psychological practice. I would say that religious actions are more important than study of religious books. I would also agree in the implication on page 38 about revealed or inspired books being the best ones. I would, however, think that spiritual practices are more about enforcing beliefs and holding on to a knowledge than taking on new information. There's experience of it in different circumstances, though. There are a lot of books that seem to have a diluted content of value, and the Eck books seem more and more to be no different. Are there not wish fulfillment dreams that are better left ignored, as Muhammad and the other prophets of God taught of? Different types of dreams, and here are the ones to not do much with. Is Harold Klemp right when he teaches that dreams should always be an important part of decision making? Dream analysis is better when more complete. Are all dreams of spiritual value beyond that, as page 39 teaches? Islam, for example, is it saying, oh, ignore your dreams or anything like that? But it is saying that, certain nightmares and stuff maybe you shouldn't dwell on. I have received warnings in the form of dreams that came true, at least in a way. Are we really less likely to understand when the warnings show in regular life? That hasn't been my experience. The pareidolia are apophenia that is inherent in golden tongue wisdom, is often missed, and the only way left to divine the missed message seems to be through dreams. Is it God as a verb, or Ek, who is giving us Ek Vidya these ways? Divine knowledge, I guess, is what that's supposed to mean. But it's supposed to be the science of prophecy. And I would always wonder about these sciences of prophecy that are like, okay, if it's really prophecy, why? Yeah, if it's really prophecy, why is it not always true? Then it's not really spiritual gifts in that way. It's guesswork. It's not even really intuition, but you can be better than average on guesswork if you really work at it. And some people are really good at guesswork, but it's not a spiritual gift. Harold Klemp claimed to have dreamt in a nap that a friend being locked out of his car related to his job at a printing company before he was fired. Was it Harold's misunderstanding or his employer's that could have got him fired? Had he not phoned that evening to correct it? I forget whether it was Paul Twitchell or Darwin Gross that was being called the Dream Master by Harold Klemp at this point. So the year that's being referred to is... Wouldn't it be much easier to only worship God as a noun, or sugmod, directly? Why should it be only for the head of religious corporations or other organizations to be directly accountable to God? God may know us better than ourselves, but doesn't that mean something is seriously wrong with us if any other gendered being does too? Shouldn't we be able to interpret our own experiences without creations being intermediaries? The Dream Master technique. I have no desire to picture Harold Klemp or any past or future entity called an Eckmaster as I go to sleep or pray. Picturing him as I say, "Hugh," and imagining myself flying through the picture seems not right for a spiritual practice. I understand why people would use tarot cards, like hieroglyphic or other diagrams, instead of images of figures they worship like this. I would side with Al-Quran 5:105 in saying Harold Klemp is wrong on page 40 when he says, "Do not worry, because soul cannot suffer injury of any kind." Well, certainly our bodies being injured and the souls being injured is not quite the same thing. That verse teaches to take care of our souls, because harm will not come to a soul when it is in the right. This makes clear that those who believe in Al-Quran do distinguish between the fate of the body and that of the operator. And that of its operator. Okay, I should have held my breath for a second there. Almost all spiritual paths have our identity as the operator of the mind and body. The Ekist is supposed to believe in whomever Eckankar calls the Mahanta, the living Ekmaster. The Dream Master, on the other side, is to hand you a woven basket to put the day's negativity in. I imagine I'd place manure in it. After all, Harold Klemp, in The Wind of Change, shared that shoveling manure prepared him for leadership in Eckankar. Page 41 says to repeat this singing cue. Hue, while visualizing flying through a picture of Harold Klemp, to meet him on the other side, to put your problems into a basket, which is then washed in an Ek current, which is like a stream by a sandy beach, up to thrice. And let me show you the main, see? Top and center is, and right in the middle there, Harold Klemp. Well, the engraven image of Harold Klemp, not a real picture, but a story is related about a person who imagined herself putting a bad movie, bad thoughts, and bad behavior of others, and recreational drug use into the basket. This Eckankar initiate dreamt about being commanded by Eckankar's living Ekmaster to take it to a colorful stream where the contents were changed to love. She asked if she could sleep without taking any of it with her, but her dream answered that it was gone. Is dream travel, or remembering it, really the first stage in God's kingdom, as he says? I have thought for many years that all creation is in God's kingdom. Workbook activities. Page 42 has the first workbook activity. I don't deem him anyone's inner master, but I figure if he had a special gift for me, it would be like gold dust in a concentration within a rock that would be of the same use as goldstone. The things called special gifts from the Mahanta are either mass-produced parts of the inner and outer Ekworks, the apophenia, called the golden-tongued wisdom, are things God has provided you through life. I won't imagine Harold Klemp handing me this discourse and reading it to me. Ekworks are like goldstone. If its glitter were gold, the gold in the Ek of Eckankar in this context works is what it has gleaned of religion as it survived in the spiritual paths it incorporates, and that which one has not escaped through the nature of things. Eckankar is like a goldstone, inasmuch as one looks at it from different angles and appreciates the beauty it contains within the substance, that is, the structure around it. Page 43 calls one to reflect, saying, Hugh, after listening to track 3 of the excerpts for the Ek Dream 1 discourses. You might want to see, you might want to look at that, look at that video again, my comments on that one. I am not going to daydream about a man or attribute my dreams to him. Why would I pray to him, asking to be reminded of what he gave me? Page 44 of the Ek Dream 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp calls to wonder how claims of him being the inner master and outer master, as the Mahanta, the living Ekmaster, releases love's power. how is he an inner master to anyone but himself? How is he an outer master to anyone who doesn't submit to his command or control? He shows a way, all right. What way, though? Is it the way of a true spiritual master, or God's authorized liege lord? For me, it opens an aversion to accepting anything from Eckankar as reliable for its own sake. My experience of the Islamic version of the practices mentioned on page 45 with activity 4 has been shared in how I related singing attributes of God as singular. Allah is the Arabic singular and definitive form for the word God, as a lullaby, to whom I call the Princess of Cups. How everything seems better dedicating it to all divinity, Allahumma, and how loving God most, and even the creation who does what I don't like, action or traits of brings a peace that wasn't otherwise there. Avoiding bad karma in the form of unnecessary hardships is what one asks about in exercise 5 on page 46. Non-interference is about freedom, and I would never take it to the indifferent place Eckankar teaches to take it. To answer the staircase of workbook activity 6 on page 47, I will go up it by saying, as much as God is the ultimate guide, I also am my own inner guide. My outer guide can be said to be the prophet of the age, Muhammad ibn Abdullah. The second step up has been of special help in entering my dream worlds in terms of understanding and openness to experience, because the desire to understand the connection between dreams and outer life is of psycho-spiritual importance. God may be in control of experience of light and sound, but God is not really one with creation. Isn't Harold Klemp, by that step, really saying he is God as a verb? I don't believe he is holy or an angel either. Longing for higher states of consciousness is also an affirmation or goal that helps with dreams in one's world view. The fifth step below, the six-pointed star, is doing the spiritual exercises of Eck as far as they don't conflict with orthodoxy or orthopraxy for me. The seventh workbook exercise includes drawing a picture of oneself doing the Dream Master technique on page 49. I won't make graven images, but I can just imagine myself in bed, trying to keep balance, by at least momentarily letting go of problems, by expressing what they are. The next page asks to write the general experiences and insights of dreams, particularly around this practice. Being open to dreaming and waking visions has been a secondary nature for a while for me. I will say that thinking about a vague dream and hoping for clarity seem to make a clarity of detailed experiences more likely. And so we come to an end of this, and before I close with the greeting here, yeah, I have dreamed of flying through things, not particularly in the Eckankar context of, fly through a picture of the master so you won't be afraid, like some sort of, yeah, it's kind of like what I imagined the football thing is when you go through the hoop, that hoop thing, but as much as we can have dreams, I do agree to a degree with what someone was saying, that it's, well, to believe the right things. But being open to psychedelic experiences and stuff, this is definitely something that's all well and good. Let's be part of that.